Stay close, the path is dark.
I'm scared. What's in the shadows?
We must keep moving. Hold my hand.
Yes, I will.
Pompeii wakes the way it always does. Stone streets warming under a bright Mediterranean sun, vendors pulling shutters up, sandals scraping basalt, fountains glittering in courtyards. Vesuvius sits on the horizon like a harmless green mountain, so familiar that most people no longer look at it with suspicion. They've lived with tremors for years. Walls cracked, columns shifted, plaster fell, and life continued. That's how danger wins in cities like this. It becomes background noise. You learn the wrong lesson because yesterday didn't kill you, tomorrow won't either. Small quakes ripple through the morning, pots rattle, dogs bark and refuse to settle. A few people glance at the mountain and then back to their errands. It's Campania. The ground is alive. The market must open. The bread must bake. The debts must be paid. The mind clings to routine because routine is proof that the world still makes sense. Then the rules change. A deep, unnatural roar rolls across the bay, not like thunder, more like the earth tearing. Heads turn, conversations stop mid-sentence. And above Vesuvius, a column punches upward with violent speed. Ash, gas, and pulverized rock surging into the sky until it forms a towering shape that looks like a tree. Trunk rising straight, canopy blooming outward. The daylight dims as if someone has placed a veil over the sun. The air gains a sharp taste, like stone dust on the tongue. At first, it's only ash, fine, gritty particles that sting eyes and cling to sweat. People cover their mouths with cloth. Children squint and cough. Some laugh nervously and say it will pass. Then the pumice begins to fall. Light stones at first, clicking against roof tiles like hard rain. The sound spreads across Pompeii, a million sharp taps that don't stop. Pumice doesn't melt away like snow. It piles up. It gets heavier every minute. And that's when the city divides into choices. Some run for the gates immediately, believing distance is safety. Others stay inside, trusting their roofs and walls. Some stop to gather valuables, rings, coins, documents. Because the brain insists on treating catastrophe like an inconvenience you can manage if you keep the important things close. You can see people making these decisions in their faces, not heroism or cowardice, just the ordinary human search for control. But outside, the sky continues to darken. Ash thickens, turning sunlight into a dull, sickly haze. Pumice builds on rooftops, on streets and courtyards. Footprints vanish behind you. Breathing becomes work. And with each hour, Pompeii becomes less like a city and more like a trap slowly filling from above. Still, most people don't panic yet. The eruption is loud, frightening, unnatural. Yet it's also distant. Humans underestimate what's distant. They tell themselves the mountain is over there, that the worst of it must be near the crater. They don't realize that what falls from the sky is only the beginning. They don't realize the true killer is not the stones they can see. It's what comes after, what moves faster than a sprint, hotter than an oven, and doesn't care if you have a roof or a prayer. By midday, the light looks wrong. Lamps are lit early. Shadows lose their edges. The city feels as if it is inside a bruise-colored fog. And somewhere in the constant clicking of pumice on tile, a quiet truth settles into the streets. This isn't a storm you wait out. This is something the world is doing to you on purpose. Pompeii has not died yet, but it has begun to disappear, one layer at a time. Hours pass, and the sound becomes the soundtrack of fear. Pumice striking roof tiles, skittering down slopes, accumulating in corners, piling into drifts along walls. Streets that were busy in the morning now feel narrower, choked with gray. People who chose to flee struggle to move as stones shift underfoot. People who chose to stay begin to feel the pressure of that choice in the groaning of timber beams above their heads. Inside houses, families gather in the safest-looking rooms, under sturdy arches, beside inner courtyards, away from windows. They don't know what safe means anymore, but they try to invent it. Cloth is tied over mouths. Water is rationed. Children cry until exhaustion quiets them. Outside, every few minutes, someone screams, a roof tile breaks, a heavy crash echoes, a neighbor's wall gives way. The city is still alive, but it's becoming a city made of noise and dust. The sky has turned into a ceiling. Ash and smoke blot out the blue, replacing it with a thick, swirling gray that makes it hard to judge distance. The sun becomes a pale coin behind the haze. People look up and see the column still rising, still feeding itself from the mountain's throat. The eruption is not tiring. It is building momentum. This is where Pompeii's first deaths happen in the most banal way possible. Wait. Pumice is light in your hand, but deadly on a roof. Hour after hour it stacks until beams bend, crack, and finally fail. A roof collapse is sudden, violent, and final. No warning except a moment of creaking. 1 minute, a family is waiting beneath wood and tile, convinced they are doing the smart thing. The next minute, the ceiling drops like a trapdoor. In the streets, visibility worsens. Ash makes eyes burn and tears flow. Tears turn ash into paste on cheeks. People bump into each other. They lose direction. The exits that seemed simple in daylight become confusing in gray darkness. Some who ran early are now miles away and safe. Some who waited are now trapped in a city that is turning into a maze of falling stone. Across the bay, a Roman observer watches the cloud with a scholar's horror. Pliny the Elder, a naval commander, sees the strange pine tree shape and understands it is extraordinary. He orders ships, not only to study the phenomenon, but to rescue those trapped along the coast. His nephew, Pliny the Younger, remains behind and later writes what he saw. The unnatural darkness, the ash falling like snow, the sea behaving strangely, the screams of people who believed the gods were ending the world. Those letters will become the closest thing Pompeii has to a witness. But inside Pompeii, knowledge doesn't matter. Only timing matters. And the city is running out of it. As afternoon slips toward evening, the light fades into a dim twilight. Not because the sun is setting, because the eruption has stolen the sky. Lamps burn in houses, torches flicker in doorways. The air is thick enough that sound feels muffled, like the city is wrapped in cloth. In that strange half-light, people make their final practical decisions. Stay or go. You can imagine the arguments. One voice insisting the roof will hold, another insisting the streets are too dangerous, a mother clutching a child and begging for certainty that no one can give. And through it all, pumice continues to fall. Pompeii is being buried while still awake, like a person slowly covered in blankets they cannot push off. The city can survive hours of this. Some do. Many do. But survival during the fall is not victory. It's only delay. Because falling stones are visible, and visible danger feels negotiable. The invisible danger is already forming on the mountain, and it does not negotiate. Night arrives, but it does not arrive like night. There is no gentle dimming, no cooling breeze, no stars appearing. Darkness drops like a lid. The eruption column has become a wall between Pompeii and the sky. and under that wall, the city is plunged into a thick, suffocating blackness. People wave torches and still can't see far. The air is filled with drifting ash that swallows light. Sound carries strangely. Shouts are heard without direction. Footsteps echo and vanish. The constant patter of falling stones becomes an endless percussion. This is the phase when panic becomes contagious. In daylight, people can coordinate, see where others are going, follow movement. In darkness, every person becomes isolated. You can hear your neighbor but cannot find them. You can hear your family and still lose them in a doorway. Children scream and are pulled close. People fall, and it is hard to help them up because the ground is sliding beneath pumice like loose gravel. Some try to flee now, guided by instinct rather than sight. They press toward gates they can barely locate. They move through streets that are no longer streets, but channels filled with stone. Every few minutes, a collapse somewhere sends a wave of dust that makes breathing worse. Many hold cloth to their faces, but cloth is not a filter. It is a comfort. The lungs still fill with fine particles, each breath scratching deeper. The mountain's roar continues, distant but constant. And mixed into it is another sound. Thunder-like bursts as parts of the column collapse back toward the slopes. Those collapses are the warning of what is coming. A shift from stuff falling to the mountain attacking. Pompeii's people don't have the language for pyroclastic surge. They don't know that an eruption can produce a ground-hugging hurricane of ash and gas that moves faster than a man can run and carries heat high enough to overwhelm the body in moments. They imagine lava, fire you can see, something slow. They imagine a siege they can endure with doors barred. They imagine the danger will behave like stories. It will not. Somewhere outside the city, along the coast, Pliny the Elder attempts rescue. His ships fight strange seas and falling ash. He reaches the shore near Stabii, where he tries to calm terrified locals. But the air grows thicker, and the heat grows worse. He eventually collapses and dies, not in a heroic duel with flame, but by the same reality that threatens Pompeii, air that becomes unbreathable. Within Pompeii, people experience the eruption like a collapsing universe. They hear the world cracking, feel the ground tremble, and wonder if this is the end of the time. Some pray. Some drink whatever water remains. Some cling to household gods. Some simply sit with their backs against walls, exhausted, waiting because they have no more decisions left to spend. Then comes the moment the city crosses from disaster into extinction. A deep rushing sound approaches, like a storm moving through a tunnel. The temperature changes abruptly. Ash shifts from falling gently to moving sideways, pulled by a force that feels alive. Doors rattle, torches sputter. The darkness thickens into something that feels heavier than darkness should. The first pyroclastic surge reaches the outskirts, a fast, low wave of ash and gas spilling over terrain like water, except it moves with terrifying speed. It doesn't announce itself with flames. It announces itself by stealing oxygen, by turning air into poison, by making breath impossible. Pompeii has survived hours of falling pumice. Many people are still alive at this exact moment, huddled inside believing endurance will outlast the eruption. The surge will prove them wrong in minutes. When a pyroclastic surge enters a city, it doesn't behave like an army. It behaves like weather. Except this weather kills on contact. It flows through streets, curls around corners, pours into courtyards, invades rooms through doorways and cracks. You can lock a door against soldiers. You cannot lock a door against a cloud. This is what makes the final moments so terrifying. The things people chose for safety become traps. A strong house, a sealed room, a hidden corner. These are only good against visible threats. Against a surge, they become sealed containers that fill with hot ash and suffocating gas. The city is hit in pulses. Some surges are weaker, spreading ash and choking the air. Others are stronger, hotter, faster, overwhelming bodies almost instantly. People in the open are knocked down by force and panic. People indoors feel heat and darkness slam into their space. There is no time to gather possessions, no time to think through options, no time for heroics. The body reacts before the mind finishes understanding. Lungs seize, eyes burn, muscles fail. It's not a burning like fire you can fight. It's a system shutdown. The human body cannot operate when air itself becomes lethal. Archaeology preserves the evidence in the cruelest possible way. Not by describing it, but by showing where people were when time stopped. In houses, bodies are found in hallways, in courtyards, under staircases, positions that reveal last-second attempts to escape, last-second hopes that a different room would be better. In the streets, forms appear where people ran until they couldn't. Groups are found together, suggesting families or strangers clinging to each other because in the final minutes, the only logic left is proximity. The most haunting thing is how fast it happens. The idea that a city dies over a day feels manageable, like you can measure it. But for many in Pompeii, the true death is compressed into a short window. Minutes when the surge arrives, and the air becomes something you cannot inhale. Outside, the eruption continues its mechanical work. It rains ash. It collapses. It surges again. The mountain is no longer an object. It is a machine producing death in cycles. By the time dawn should return, Pompeii's dawn is buried. There is no sunrise in the city because the city no longer has a sky. The streets are filled, roofs are gone, doorways are buried. If you stood above it, you would not see a town. You would see a strange gray landscape where the outlines of buildings are softened into mounds. And yet the eruption keeps going, sealing what it has taken. This is the final transformation. Pompeii stops being a place and becomes a container. Ash hardens. Pumice packs tight. Rooms are filled. Voids remain where bodies lay, and over time those bodies decompose, leaving empty spaces in the hardened ash. Those voids will wait, silent, hidden, for centuries, until humans return with tools and curiosity. Pompeii is dead, but it is being preserved at the same time, like a photograph developing in darkness. After the eruption ends, the world around Pompeii eventually heals the way landscapes always do. Trees return, new paths form, survivors settle elsewhere. Life moves on because it has to. But Pompeii does not return. It is gone beneath meters of ash and stone. People know the city is there in a sense, but there becomes abstract. The dead are not dug up. The streets are not cleared. The buried becomes myth, then rumor, then curiosity. Centuries later, when excavators begin to uncover the city, they find something unsettling. Not ruins in the usual way, but daily life frozen. Houses still have wall paintings, shops still have counters, amphorae still sit where they were stored. It's as if the city did not decay, because decay requires air, and Pompeii was sealed. Then the most haunting discovery appears: hollow spaces in the ash where bodies once were. When plaster is poured into these voids, shapes emerge, people captured at the moment they stopped moving. Not actors, not statues, but ordinary citizens caught by physics. A hand raised, a body curled, a face pressed into an arm. The casts become Pompeii's last testimony, and they are brutal because they make the invisible visible. The story of Pompeii often gets reduced to a single image: a volcano, ash, ruins. But the real story is about how humans interpret warning. Pompeii did not die because its people were foolish. It died because they were normal. They had felt earthquakes before and survived. They had rebuilt. They had adapted. They assumed the pattern would continue. They normalized the mountain. And on that day, the mountain spoke in a language that normal life cannot survive. The tragedy is also the reason Pompeii matters. It shows how fast a city can go from routine to extinction when nature stops negotiating. It shows the difference between danger that falls slowly from the sky and danger that arrives as a surge you cannot outrun. It shows that survival is often determined not by courage, but by timing, by which decision you make before you fully realize you are making it. If you want a single image to hold on to, don't picture ruins first. Picture the moment the light changed, when ash began to soften the sun and pumice began to click on rooftops. Picture people standing in streets, looking up at a sky that was turning into stone. And then picture the final truth. The killer wasn't a wall of flame. It was air that stopped being air. Pompeii didn't just burn. It was switched off, then sealed so perfectly that 2,000 years later, it can still show us exactly how quickly an ordinary day can become the last day.